Hello my friends, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. We're going to be doing our March reading wrap up. I know, a little bit late for this, but April was a bit of a doozy month, and I kind of had a rough go of it for a couple weeks, but here we are. We're going to go ahead and get into this reading wrap up. So in March I read 13 books. All of them were romance or a different subgenre of romance, so let's go ahead and get into it, because while I did do a lot of vlogging in March, and I talked about like real time, and I go into more depth, like kind of a lot. Sometimes I talk for a really long time in my vlogs about a lot of these books. A lot of these I haven't mentioned before, so I'm excited. I'm here to talk to you about them. So the first book that I want to talk about is Peaches and Honey. This is a fantasy romance that I've heard a lot of things about. I've heard a lot of really excellent things about this book. People really seem to love it. So I did go into this book with a little bit of high expectations. I fully expected to just enjoy the heck out of this. I thought it was going to be 100% right up my alley. And I did feel a little bit disappointed by this one, to be quite honest. Definitely gives vibes of sort of like a Addie LaRue meets Divine Rivals type of thing. It is set very far back in the past. I believe this again is set in like 1700, something like that. So we have our heroine who has vitiligo, I believe is how you say it. A skin condition, and people assume that she has like leprosy, that she is very dangerous. They don't want to come into contact with her, and so she's really outcast in her society. Everything changes for her when a shape-shifting god approaches her with a peach that is going to grant her immortality, and then her life is forever changed. And so most of the book is shown to us in little scenes that are not really connected. There really isn't a connected driving force that powers these scenes through the story to give us like a cohesive thread of storytelling, other than the fact that we're following our main character through time, and we're getting to see events that happen in the time periods that she's in, but we don't really see the impact that that has on our main character. She just almost appears like she is at these historical scenes and she's experiencing them, but it's not changing her, it's not doing anything for her, it's not showing us more about her. So I feel like this book honestly reads like a collection of brief scenes in the past, some historical details added, with some pretty writing, right? Now, I am a huge fan of strong, beautiful prose. I think that prose can do so much to add depth and dimension to a story and really show us what the author is trying to do here. And I think that prose needs to be more than either just serviceable or beautiful. Like, it has to have an impact on the characters in the story. It's an aspect of storytelling, right? And so for me, I feel like the prose in here, while beautiful words, they really didn't do much to show us what the character is thinking or feeling or how the scenes are impacting her. It almost felt like a disconnect between our character experiencing these scenes and then a narrator sort of putting beautiful words in here to make it beautiful, to make it quotable for like a TikTok or something like that. So the prose in here, while at times was pretty, it didn't really work for me because I don't feel like it was any type of cohesive element to bring the story together and to make it feel more powerful, right? And that's my biggest complaint with this book. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I think that the premise is really great. I absolutely love the idea of this ancient god who sees this girl and wants to grant her immortality because maybe he has like feelings for her. There's some reason why he wants to give her that, and we don't find out at all what that is until very, very, very late in the book. And I believe this is a duology. I probably at some point will finish this, but it's going to be a while because this book was kind of painful to get through. I just didn't care about anything. Everything about this book felt very surface level, which is so disappointing because the whole premise, I felt like the premise, the concept, the characters, we had the potential to really dive deep and to experience why she's feeling like this and how all of these historical events are going to impact her, and this shape-shifting god who just kind of flits in and out of things. So I would say that, like, don't go into this expecting a big fantasy romance because the romance is very minimal in this book, which is fine. I feel like I was expecting a bit more just because of the praise that this book had, but I think that, honestly, this book just felt surface level, and there was a disconnect. None of the scenes in here, none of the historical scenes, none of the scenes with our character really did anything to drive us towards who is this person? Why do we care about them? What is this journey that they're going on? What's happening here? It felt very disconnected and very surface level, and honestly, it was pretty disappointing. So, good effort, but not a really big win for me. So, okay, the next book that I read, I actually started reading this in January. This was a fan fiction. I finally read Manacled. I have a whole video reviewing that, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of depth here with that, but Manacled is a fan fiction set in, I believe, an alternate universe of Harry Potter, where instead of Harry and everybody winning, Voldemort wins. And so then we see what happens there. So it's sort of like a dark retelling of what would happen. And there are Handmaid's Tales vibe in there because there is like a breeding program and things like that to preserve purebloods, and Hermione ends up getting put into the breeding program as Draco's surrogate, essentially. So I feel like there's so much to say about this book, but the only thing I'm really going to say is that I gave this 6 stars. This fan fiction deeply impacted me, deeply moved me. I don't feel like I have felt this way about a book in years. I was so obsessed with these characters. I was so obsessed with the story. The development of the characters in here and the relationship is unmatched. This was absolute perfection in my eyes, and I honestly adored all of it. There were times as I was reading this, like I was messaging Jen and Jessen about this. There were times as I was reading it that I felt like, this is kind of slow for me. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this, because there are, it's very long and there are parts of it that feel like maybe this is unnecessary. But then when you get to the end, every little bit of it feels so necessary. And this book had me crying at the end. I just adored it. I am completely obsessed with it. 6 stars. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So honestly, I have nothing negative to say about it. I thought it was transformative. I loved what she did with the characters. I loved what she did with the story. It was deeply moving and impactful, and this is a book that I am not going to forget anytime soon. So now the next one that I read is Craving in His Blood by Zoey Draven. So this is book 2 in her Brides of the Kylor series. This is a sci-fi romance, and Zoey Draven is probably, I have another sci-fi romance author in here that is absolutely my favorite, but Zoey Draven is such a fantastic author. There is not a single book from her that I have read that I haven't felt like so sucked in, so hooked. I just love the characters. I love the story. I think her world building is fantastic. If you haven't tried sci-fi romance, and for some reason, I would highly recommend starting with Zoey Draven because she is absolutely incredible. I think that she's doing such powerful stuff with her romances too that goes beyond just like these elements that readers typically want in like a monster romance, like different type of anatomy and things like that. I think that she's really providing an excellent backdrop for her characters to have some meaningful, depth-filled interaction that really gives you some insight on your own world. Like, I just feel like she is incredible. I love her so much. So this book was fantastic. At this point when I read this early on in March, I was still really pretty deep into a reading slump, so this is the book that really pulled me out of it. I was so hooked. I absolutely loved this. I gave it 5 stars. So in this world, the Kylor are sort of like, they're kind of vampire-esque and kind of gargoyle-esque. They have also this berserker type of phase where they kind of go into battle craze. They're very strong, they're very powerful. And there is an element of this world where they can find like their blood mate because they feed off of humans and things like that. When they find someone's blood who like sings to them, it means something different to them, and sometimes it can just be a blood hunger type of thing, and other times it's more of like a soul type of connection. So in here we have our heroine who is a chef, and she comes to this planet basically, and she is suffering through some grief and some hard times that have come her way, and she ends up meeting our hero, and he is this very powerful Kylor. He has nobility and royalty in his bloodline, and he cannot stay away from her. They feel this connection that is only strengthened as, he does feed on her eventually, and it's just so good. I loved this book so much. The pacing was fantastic. The characters were fantastic. Everything was developed at the stage that I felt like it needed to be. I just felt like this was a completely fulfilling reading experience, and I adored it. So 5 stars for this one. Okay, so now the next two that I read are books that I did do an exclusive reading vlog on my Patreon for the So Delicious tier. I have a 7-day free trial if you want to try that. The link is always down below. So Delicious is the highest, it's the most expensive tier, but you do get the most perks out of it. And one of those is an exclusive reading vlog for a book that we do, basically like a buddy read book club type of thing. We do a live show at the end of the month, and there's a theme for it every month. So in March, the theme was sci-fi romance, and the one book that won, without a doubt, was Ensnared. So that reading vlog has Ensnared, like complete, it's a really long reading vlog, and it also has Convergence, which I'm going to talk about next, by Etta Pierce, because this is a book, I decided to include Convergence in that vlog because it was recommended me so much by one of my patrons, Erin, that I kind of wanted to give her that experience of me reading it in a vlog just for them. So usually when I do a Patreon exclusive reading vlog, I don't talk about that book outside of Patreon, so I'm not going to tell you my thoughts about Ensnared. That's specifically just for patrons. So the sci-fi romance, alien, monster, exclusive reading vlog for patron, but I will talk about Convergence, which is not exclusive. I just did include that as part of the reading vlog. So Convergence is a sci-fi romance. This is a brand new to me author, and I really didn't know a lot about this. Honestly, I was 100% going into this based off of what Erin and a few other people had told me. Erin, another Erin, and Lauren, all of them loved this book and were really wanting me to read it. But Erin was the one who really piqued my interest with it. And so the whole concept of this book, this is the first in a series, is our heroine is like a profiler, like a serial killer profiler type of thing, and she works for, I believe, the LA Police Department. And one night she is in the human world thinking about a case. She's at her apartment and she's kidnapped and taken to this alien planet. She wakes up in this holding cell and she has no idea what's going on. Come to find out, she had been being watched by this alien commander because of her ability to break down behavior of humans, because she's a profiler. He kidnapped her hoping that she would be able to help him break down human behavior so that he could go in and pose as someone who knows a lot about humans and rescue humans who have been taken from her planet to be used as in sex trafficking in his alien world. So that's the whole premise, and of course it starts with a kidnapping. And I was really, really impressed with every aspect of this book. I gave this 6 stars. I thought it was phenomenal, truly. I was obsessed with this book. I was obsessed with the story, the world building, the characters. I think that, you know, one thing that can be a bit of a deal breaker for me in any type of fantasy romance or sci-fi romance or even historical romance is if the world doesn't feel fully fleshed out and developed. And by that I mean it has to be well thought out, it has to make sense. It doesn't just have to be unique, but it has to feel like, this feels like a real actual world that could take place, and it is vital, the world itself is vital to the story and to the characters and what they're going to be doing from this point on. And I think that of all of the books that I have read recently, this book is by far and away the very best that I have read in world building. Like seriously, this author knows exactly how to build a world that isn't hard to get into. It doesn't feel like there's this huge barrier to entry of entering into her sci-fi world. It is very easy to understand, even though she's got all these different types of alien beings and races and they're described differently. There is a pretty big glossary in the beginning that I kind of glanced over, and then I would reference it as I was reading the book to see like, oh, that's who this person is, and you know, like, so you could find out what they look like or remember what they looked like. Anyway, it was helpful to use as a reference. But the world building was absolutely phenomenal, very interesting, solid, just fantastic. The characters in here were so good, and not just the hero and heroine, but there are a lot of side characters in here that are also extremely well developed. They really feel like real people. They feel like they're integral to the plot and the story and the world. They're not just there as like a cardboard cutout or to make the hero and heroine be together. I also feel like the plotting in here was so solid, because even though the basic plot is, okay, they're going to go and rescue these humans from this sex trafficking plot, it doesn't ever feel like basic. It feels like this is the type of plotting and storytelling that I really enjoy a lot, because it's just kind of guiding you along slowly, giving you a little reveal, and then, you know, giving you another mystery, and then another little reveal. So your interest is high, like the whole way that you're reading this. I think that makes for such a satisfying read in any type of genre. I feel like you always have to have that question of, well, what's going to happen next? And sometimes I think this is where a lot of authors miss the mark, and specifically I'm thinking of Peaches and Honey. There was never that question of what's going to happen next, because it doesn't matter in that book, because you don't know what the overall question or plot is. It's just, here's a historical event and here's a historical event, right? Whereas when you're reading something like Convergence or the Zoey Draven, you know exactly where you want to end up, this ending point of the plot, but there are little events that kind of guide you and keep your interest piqued by answering a little bit of the question and then providing another question. And I just find that to be peak storytelling. And that is how romances, I think, are effectively built as well. Because if you just feel like, oh, well, it's easy for them to be together, or there is no barrier to them being together, then it's just sort of like, why do I care about these people? You know, like, I need a reason to care. And a lot of the times that reason has to be curiosity of what's going to happen with them. How are they going to get together? How are they going to solve this? What is the point? What is the point, right? So when I was reading Convergence, my interest was so high the whole time. Like, this was a book that I had a hard time putting down. I was so compelled with these characters. I loved our heroine. She's very strong. She's very intelligent. She is powerful, but she also really does rely a lot on her sexuality and femininity, which I really enjoyed. And the hero was fantastic. Oh my goodness, this alien hero with mandibles. I just adored him. I thought he was fantastic. He was so wonderfully created. And the way that this book built their romance, like, I know I've talked a lot about storytelling and world building here, but the romance in here was just such a beautiful, true, slow burn. Such a slow burn. The tension between these two was so high. It was absolutely killing me. I was like, okay, they have to be together. And I sort of feel like that element of, I need these two to be together right now, is lacking in a lot of modern day, commonly or currently written romances. I feel like too often they get together right away and then we get to see them have sexy times throughout the rest of the book. And I just sort of feel like I want to feel like I am burning, I am dying for these two to be together, right? So this book gives you that if you want it. It's on Kindle Unlimited, by the way. So yeah, I adored this book. I thought it was fantastic. This was probably, other than Manacled, honestly, which I feel like it's hard. I had a great reading month in March, and this book was my favorite book. Manacled was my favorite fan fiction. I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I can't say enough good things about it. Thank you to everyone, specifically my patrons. They're the whole reason that I read this. Aaron, Lauren, Bene, thank you everybody, because I adored this. And the second book is on my TBR. I am for April. I'm probably not going to get to it in time because I've been reading other stuff, but man, it was so good. Okay, the next book was a disappointing one, however. It's Worth Any Price by Lisa Kleypas. This is, I don't remember what book in the Bow Street Runners this is. This may be book 3? I can't remember. Anyway, series complete. I finished the Bow Street Runners series, one of my least favorite Lisa Kleypas series. I didn't really like any of the books in this series. This one was extremely disappointing to me. I gave it 2 stars. You know, Lisa Kleypas is such a stellar author for me, and one of the things that makes her that way is how she builds her romances to feel romantic. And when I think about reading a historical romance, the one thing that I want more than anything is a feeling of sweeping romance. I want the romantic element to be very high, and that's why I go to historical romances most of the time, honestly. This book, I feel like the romantic element was 100% missing, and instead we were relying on the sensuality and the sexuality of the two and how much they wanted to be together so they could do it, you know? And that is a valid reason for a romance to exist, but I don't like books like that. I find them boring. I find them to be contrived. I'm not interested in that, right? So the entire plot of this is our hero. It opens with him having sexual awakening period with a courtesan. She's like, you're going to be a great lover, blah, blah, blah. I'll teach you all the things. And then he ends up working as a bow street runner, and he has to try and track down this woman. And then he finds out that she is actually on the run from someone she's supposed to marry, but he's like a terrible guy. So he's like, why don't you marry me instead? And then we can do all of the sexy things. And then that's basically the gist of the story. Deeply disappointed with this one. The writing quality, as always, is high. The characters were fine, but they were very one note, because literally the only thing that mattered to them was sex, and I just don't care about books like that. So 2 stars. I found it to be boring. I found it to be uninteresting, which is another word for boring, and I just was disappointed. Like, by far my most disappointing read of the month, which sucks because she's my favorite historical romance author. Okay, so now the next book that I read is another fan fiction, and it is another Hermione one. It is Wait and Hope. This one, you guys, if you are looking for something that has a lot of yearning and longing, you have to read this one. The romance in this was so beautiful. I was absolutely like in tears at the end. So I have cried over 2 fan fiction books this month. They moved me to tears. They were some of the most romantic, literally, those 2 books are the most romantic books that I have read, like, this whole month. I found them to be so deeply romantic, and they gave me that feeling of, I want to watch somebody fall in love and fight for it and come back together. Like, I just adored these. So Wait and Hope is basically years into the future. Harry and everybody has won. Everybody is still alive. You know, things are going well. Hermione and Draco are married, and the book opens with Hermione at the hospital because she had a magical accident and she has lost her memory for the last 6 years. And those 6 years are when she met, fell in love, and married Draco. So the book opens with her in the hospital. She doesn't know what's going on, and somebody says, hey, you're actually married to Draco. Meanwhile, she can hear Draco down the hall yelling, where's my wife? What happened to my wife? And like, I'm getting chills just talking about it. If you're looking for a very powerful, very true, where is my wife? This right here. Like, it was seriously so romantic. So the whole book, the whole fic is her trying to get her memories back of falling in love with Draco, and Draco trying to not get his heart broken that his wife, who he loves so freaking much, does not remember him. And the memories that she has of him are of him being a little, like, twerp, you know? Like, it was fantastic. I loved it. This was 5 stars for sure. Like, I know that you're not supposed to technically rate fan fiction, so I'm not going to be rating anything below a 5 star. I'll just talk about it. But this was fantastic, and beautiful romance. Seriously. Okay, so now the next book that I read is Wildside by Elsie Silver. I absolutely loved this book. I gave this 6 stars. Again, I had 3 6-star reads this month, which was amazing. I love this contemporary romance. I love this series. Elsie Silver is such a fantastic romance author, and this was just so much fun. So the premise of this is we have our heroine who has lost her sister, and now our heroine is trying to get custody of her child to raise him. Meanwhile, her sister actually left him in the care of her next door neighbor, who is actually a professional wrestler, like incognito, nobody's supposed to know. And from the beginning of the book, before her sister had passed away, we see our heroine and hero meet. They have sparks, they have chemistry, and then they never meet again. And a few years pass, and her sister has passed away, and things start happening where she's trying to figure out, why did my sister leave her son to you instead of me, her sister? So this is a book that has a lot of family drama in here. This is a book that has a lot of grief. It has a lot of like healing, and I loved the romance in here. I found it to be just so beautiful, and I loved watching these two feel like they wanted to be together, but kind of trying to rein it back in because they weren't sure what that meant about the boy, that they were trying to do what was best for him. This also had a marriage of convenience in here that I didn't mention, that is, I think, perfectly executed, and that's a hard thing to do in a contemporary romance. So I love this book. I found it to be full of depth and emotion and beautiful, beautiful romantic moments. I loved it. 6 stars. Okay, the next book that I read is Painted Scars by Neva Altaj. So this is book 1 in her Mafia series. I actually have read, I believe, the second book in here, so I read them a little out of order. So this one is another marriage of convenience between Mafia, I don't know, the lead guy in the Mafia, and then she is obviously getting sold off to marry him to pay off a debt of her father's. She is an artist. He is a very powerful man, but he has an injury, so he is a disabled hero. And I really enjoyed watching these two come together and fall in love. She is a very strong heroine. She is a little bit sassy, but she is also very vulnerable in a lot of ways. And I loved watching him respect and admire how vulnerable she was and find that as something to almost like praise about her, that she wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. But also I liked how he really enjoyed her strength and her wit and how clever she was. Like, I feel like this is a book that has a hero fully admiring a lot of things about the heroine, and I just thought it was really fun, really sweet. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, the next book that I read is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I had a lot of high hopes for this one. I heard great things about it. It's essentially a modern day spin on Sleepless in Seattle, where we have our hero who is a radio host who hosts this show about love, and because of that and hearing people call in, he's kind of become disillusioned with the idea of love and not sure that it exists even. And then we have our heroine who has never actually been in love. She's a single mom. She had this daughter in high school. It was her first time having sex, and there was no really love there. She's still friendly with the dad, who is now in a relationship with a man, and she has never been in love, and she really kind of, it feels a little bit lost in her life. So her daughter kind of takes it upon her to call into this radio show on her mom's behalf to try and find love for her mom. And that show, that call-in was such a huge success that the people who make the radio show want her to come on and be on the show to get ratings, to get viewers or listeners or whatever. And so she does. And so our radio host and our heroine are on this talk show together, and they start falling in love. And it was so beautiful watching them fall in love. Really beautifully, slowly drawn out, really built up well. I liked the background of the characters. I liked the heroine seeing, you know, the kind of the trauma that she had with her parents who had abandoned her when she had this baby as a teenager, essentially. I did like seeing into the hero's point of view of why he didn't believe in love. I liked watching him sort of get very protective when she would go on dates with these guys who would call in. Like, I really enjoyed a lot of this book. I thought it was really, really great. I didn't particularly like the third act conflict. It's probably my least favorite way to have a conflict. I didn't like how much our heroine had to make concessions for the hero, kind of not being emotionally where I wanted him to be, and I didn't love that. So overall, I really did like this one. I didn't love it. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, the next one that I read is Story of My Life by Lucy Score. So this is a contemporary romance, and I feel like Lucy Score is maybe just not for me. I don't particularly like her humor. I don't think it's bad, but I think that her books kind of feel a little bit slapsticky, kind of 90s sitcom type of humor to me, which, as someone who grew up in the 90s, like, I don't hate that, but it's also something that I'm just sort of like not sure that I enjoy reading about a ton because I don't feel like it always lands. So in this book we have our heroine who is divorced. She is a romance author. She was wildly popular and successful, but she's had some real big mental health struggles and just finding it hard to write again, to the point where she's going to lose her contract with her publisher if she doesn't get a book out right away. So to kind of combat this feeling of writer's block and also that she's running out of money, she decides to sell her New York apartment and go to, like, out in the boondocks, basically, this very small town. She buys a place out there where she thinks she can just go and write. And as she does that, she meets our hero who lives out there. His family runs a construction company, and she hires him to work and renovate this house. So there are a lot of, like, funny moments that happen in here that were pretty fun. And the romance between the two of them kind of develops a little quickly because she basically is telling him, I am going to use you as my muse for this book that I'm writing, your perfect romance hero material. So it felt a little bit too meta, that is going to, like, every romance reader is going to get what she's putting down here, but it also just feels a little too on the nose in that way. So I liked this book. It was fun, but there were a few things that were a little bit, like, eye-rolly I didn't particularly love about this. So 3 stars for this one. Okay, the next book that I read is Beautiful Wreck. This is a really unique book that I think is probably a little closer to historical fiction than necessarily a romance, but it is, like, romance is driving the story forward. And it also, like, it's a little bit sci-fi element, so I feel like this kind of crosses a lot of genres. So the basic premise of this is our heroine lives in a futuristic world where most of what they do in this world is powered by, like, a virtual reality. They don't really get to experience a lot of things in real time. So something that she does is she has created simulations of a Viking community, a historical community, so she's deeply immersed in the history of the Viking time period and things like that. And then suddenly she gets sucked back in time to the actual Viking time period, and it takes her a little bit to realize, like, she actually was taken back in time and is experiencing this in real life and not in a simulation. She ends up falling in love with the Viking lord at the time, who has this birthmark on him that marks him as cursed among his people. So basically that curse makes it so he can't take a wife, he can't, you know, produce a child or anything like that, so that they don't pass the curse on. And our heroine comes obviously from outside of this community, and she's like, well, I'm not afraid of that at all. And a lot of her driving force for wanting to be together with the hero is sexually driven. Like, she finds him very physically attractive and wants to almost, I wouldn't say conquer that, but she wants to be like his first. Like, that's something that really drives her forward. I also feel like the hero wasn't fully fleshed out enough for me. I feel like he seemed a little bit flat. I wanted him to have a little bit more character development. And I also do feel like this book suffered from something that is a little bit of become a bit of a personal pet peeve of mine, and I didn't love how much description was in here. I didn't particularly like the way the description was written, which to me didn't feel like it was really adding to or necessary to the story or the characters, but it was useful to create an idea of what the setting looked like, which is important to the story, but I feel like it could have been cut down quite a bit because it really slowed the pace of this down. This is not a fast-paced book at all, but if you don't typically like enjoy reading a lot of description, this is probably not going to be the book for you because it has a ton of it in there. So I think that this book is beautiful. I think that it has a lot of good elements to it, but it kind of missed the mark for me, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Okay, and then the last book that I read is A Tempest of Desire by Lorraine Heath, and this book was another disappointing one for me, largely because for some of the same reasons that I didn't like the Lisa Kleypas. So the two historical romances that I read this month were disappointing to me because neither one of them gave me what I want in a historical, which is a deeply romantic vibe, and I don't feel like either of these had that. So this is basically our hero. He's in a train accident. He goes to his private island and to kind of like lick his wounds and be away from society. And then lo and behold, in a hot air balloon crash to this island is this extremely famous courtesan, right? And that's how they meet. He obviously already knows her because she's this famous courtesan. He wants to have her. He wants to bed her. And she, you know, is not like other girls. She talks about bugs, and he finds her interesting in a way that, like, oh, she's different from other girls, you know? And again, once again, the thing driving the relationship forward is their sexual desire for each other, which, while important, I don't want that to be the focus of the book, and it just felt like it was very reductive in that way because we didn't get to see a whole lot of other development in the relationship happen other than what was driving them physically, which, again, not my favorite. So disappointed by this one, but not as much as the Lisa Kleypas, so I gave this one 3 stars. So all right, my friends, there you have it. That is my March reading wrap up. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I thank you so much for being here and for watching it. And yeah, let me know what your favorite read of March was and if you are going to pick up any of these that I mentioned. And I will see y'all in my next video.